show for all your latest UFC news and rumors. It's Brian Coyle. It's Sean Stanley. It's the TFM Live podcast. And it's now.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back. This is the fourth edition of TFM Live, the official podcast of FullMountMMA.com. I'm Brian Coyle, joined alongside with Sean Stanley. We may be 1,000 miles away, but we're certainly riled up to talk MMA this week. Sean, how you doing today?
Doing good. Can't wait to be talking about this MMA. A lot of crazy stuff happening in the world of MMA.
I think crazy is lowballing it a little bit. The week that we've had, and unfortunately, we're not talking about something like the UFC booking another badass fight, which I mean they've been doing recently. Yeah. But we're talking about a very unfortunate occurrence. Now, if you know anything about MMA, or if you don't, period, you probably know who the Diaz brothers are. Nick and Nate Diaz are some of the most, I would say, colorful personalities in the sport today. One of them, Nick Diaz, failed a drug test at UFC 183 following his fight against Anderson Silva that he lost. He failed it due to marijuana. He went up on Monday, to the Nevada Athletic Commission, who were going to hand down their sentence for how long he would be suspended or fined or whatever the case may be. And I'm going to break this down as simplest terms as possible because it's a little complicated when you get into the details. So his hearing, him and his law team basically argued the fact that the NAC drug code, the Nevada Athletic Commission drug code, which goes into effect later this year, was not valid at the time of Diaz's third fight, his fight at UFC 183. And it was a third-time positive test for marijuana, which constitute a 3-year suspension under those current rules that set in place. However, even though, despite the fact they laid in some pretty good evidence, and I think you'll agree with me on this, Sean.
Yes.
They completely ignored the rules set upon them, and in a very vindictive manner, Nick Diaz was suspended 5 years for a failed drug test for marijuana following his UFC 183 fight. I want to get your thoughts right away, just plain and simple. What do you think about this whole situation?
No, abuse of power. I mean, that's pretty much, there's nothing that they can do about it. And it's just, I mean, and also I believe there was a hefty fine. I believe as well.
$150,000.
So, yeah. So, I mean, it's not even like, it's like, hey, here you go. And now, hey, guess what? We're going to add on to that. It's just, to me, it's a really abuse of power. And I guess it's almost like, well, what can they do about it? It's almost like they're just saying, hey, here's what we're going to do. What are you going to do to us? It's almost like they're almost challenging them to take a stand.
Now, Nick Diaz, of course, is a very, like I said, colorful individual. And, I mean, people may like him, people may hate him. And he's not the, I wouldn't classify him as the sharpest tool in the shed or the most, smart when it comes to public relations. His background is very interesting, coming out of Stockton, California, and the trials and tribulations of his childhood growing up and all of that. But simply put, when we're looking at this suspension, he was suspended in 2007 and for marijuana. He was suspended in 2012 again. He failed both drug tests in 2007 and 2012. And now this was the third time. There were 3 samples taken on the night of January 31st, one night prior to his fight against Anderson Silva. That's when they take these drug tests. He submitted 3 urine samples. The first and the third were administered under the World Anti-Doping Agency protocol and were submitted for testing. And all this is coming from MMAfighting.com. Did a great job of being all over this story, so I'm going to give them credit for it. Everything that I'm reading off of right now. They submitted it for testing at the WADA Accredited Sports Medicine Research Testing Laboratory in Salt Lake City, Utah. Both of those tests came back clean. There was another one, and I actually have experience with this company, believe it or not, that was administered as a separate testing representative. It was submitted to Quest Diagnostics, which is right from my home state of wonderful New Jersey. And I can just say the outward look upon New Jersey is the inward look upon New Jersey in the United States, Sean. So if you have any preconceived notions, like most people have probably listened to this, New Jersey is New Jersey. And that was where the marijuana test tested positive. So Diaz's lawyer brought that in during the hearing and said, listen, the ones under the World Anti-Doping Agency protocol tested fine. This other outside company, which is not as accredited and not something they use, did not work. So we argue against getting suspended for 3 years or whatever. But like you said, they did not follow any letter of the law here, vindictively suspended him 5 years. This suspension essentially ends Diaz's career at this point, don't you think?
No, most definitely. I mean, what, now he'll be 37, I think, or 36, 37, before he'll be eligible to fight again. And I mean, and you'll be out of competition for 5 years. I mean, you can still hit the mat, you can roll around, you can train, but it's not going to be the same if you haven't fought for 5 years trying to get back into the octagon in the competition. By that time in the UFC, you're looking at, in 5 years, I don't even know what the UFC is going to look like.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely crazy. And here's the thing. Under these new rules that weren't even put into effect until this year, what they thought the sentence would be 3 years of a suspension, which is still a lot.
Yeah.
Like, it's a ridiculous amount. But they went over and beyond, and this smells way too much of, I mean, we're comparing apples to oranges here, but the National Football League just had a whole big thing about suspending someone way too much, just even though you have something in place that follows the letter of the law, a la Tom Brady and the inflating and deflation of game balls, where in the rule book, it's something is like stick 'em. It's like heating up the kicking balls. It's a $25,000 fine. Mm-hmm. So, and then they suspended Brady 4 games. They took it to real court because the NFL's kangaroo court, where they can do whatever they want, didn't work. And then they put it up to real law, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, but
very similar thing here with the Nevada Athletic Commission, where they just said, you know what, we don't like you. We don't like the way you're trying to appeal the suspension. We don't like anything that you've been doing. And supposedly it was real heated in the room when Diaz's attorney was fighting this. Mm-hmm. And he, of course, Nick Diaz himself pleaded the fifth to everything, so he didn't answer a question, which he can do by letter of the law. Yep. But they were not happy with him, and they just ignored pretty much everything and just threw the book at him, literally.
Yeah, and I was going to say, something that the NFL has that UFC doesn't have is a players' association or a fighters' association backing them up. You know, that doesn't happen in the UFC or MMA anywhere, you know, I'm just saying. But there's no union, no nothing for them. So
and you can go back
maybe
and forth
this might be that start to maybe look into something else, and then you wonder what is going to stay, what's going to happen with the UFC and MMA companies going forward if this does get, you know, if some of these fighters start banding together. Mm-hmm. I mean, it could change the whole world of MMA right while UFC's on such a high.
Yes, and the weird thing is here, Anderson Silva went in front of the same athletic commission not too long ago, was suspended for a year retroactive to his fight at UFC 183. So he'll be back in like February if he wanted to be. And he tested positive for steroids.
Yep.
Steroids.
He had performance-enhancing drugs.
Yes, not marijuana, which is legal in several states in the United States. Yeah. But he tested positive for steroids. He's a big name. Favoritism could be accounted for if you were arguing in one way or another. Mm-hmm. And it just smells as something rotten here. And you brought up the union point. And it's interesting you mentioned that because there probably should be a fighters union, depending on where you fall on that whole issue as a whole. I mean, you can argue every way, but somebody needs to stand up for these fighters.
Yeah, there's got to be a voice for them somewhere.
Something to back this up. And it's funny because the UFC, they asked Dana White about this, and he's like, they don't listen to what I say to that Nevada Athletic Commission. They don't listen to him. They still put Steve Mazzagatti as a referee for fights, even though he clearly has no idea what he's doing. Yep. Like this stuff happens, and it's a problem when there's no huge governing body worldwide that can hold up, you know, all of these rules and make it clean across the board. That's why you get Brazil drug test stories with Jose Aldo. This is why you get this villainous suspension on Nick Diaz. This is why these things happen, because there's no overarching body that figures all this out. And until there is, we're going to keep getting stories like this and keep getting guys who are falling victim to personal vendettas and all this nonsense.
Yeah, you just wonder where does it stop? I mean, when's enough? And somebody, Cole Miller was like something like one of the only things, us as fighters stand together and not fight in Nevada. Well, that's where UFC makes all their money. So
yeah, Henry Cejudo said the same thing.
Yeah, Cejudo actually came out and said the same thing. He's like, I'm, boycotting against fighting in Nevada. Well, if you're on a card and you're under contract, what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do right now. So you can say whatever you want to say on Twitter, but the ultimate outcome is going to be you're probably going to have to fight, or you're going to be in, you're going to be out of breach of contract. So, I mean, they're in a tough spot. And I think this might be something to where, looking at what some of the fighters are saying and the different fighters, there's some from Bellator, some from MMA, some from UFC, some that are out of UFC now, but had a name. You start
like
seeing
Quarry, for example.
Yeah. You start seeing some of these guys popping back up now. Maybe they use one of those. Maybe that's something that they look at. You gotta have a voice or somebody that can be, you're a representative. There's got to be something. Somebody's got to come up with something, or everything that the UFC is building up right now, honestly, could come to an abrupt stop, even though they've got a lot of momentum and everything. But this could be that one thing that, if they stand and it's not just a bunch of tough guy talk with smoke about this situation, you're looking at UFC's got to be kind of watching this, not necessarily like worried about it, but there could be a fallback to some of this. Because
it's funny you mentioned a face of a movement or something like that, and like this is one of several examples, like the Reebok deal, for example, which kind of went down out of nowhere, and the fighters are not happy about it when it came to sponsorships and all that. But when you look at a face of something, who is the biggest fighter in the UFC, in the sport of MMA right now? Who is it?
And there's two. There'd be Rousey is the biggest, and then probably McGregor.
Yes, and like you said, Ronda Rousey is the biggest fighter. She had something to say about this during her UFC 193 press conference in Australia, and I'm not talking about the slip she made during her press conference, which you can look up the quotes to if you want. I'm not going to repeat those words on this show because this is a family show. At least I try to keep it this way.
We're PG here, PG.
Yes, it's the PG era of the TFM Live podcast. Rousey said in response to Diaz being banned for 5 years for a failed drug test for, again, marijuana. Just putting that out there. It's, quote, "It's so not right for him to be suspended 5 years for marijuana. I'm against them for testing for weed at all. It's not a performance-enhancing drug. It has nothing to do with athletic competition. It's only tested for political reasons. They say, oh, it's for your safety to keep you from hurting yourself while you're out there. Why don't they test for all the other things that could possibly hurt us?" She also destroyed the NAC for giving Diaz a longer suspension than, again, like we said, Anderson Silva, legend of the fight game, tested positive for steroids, can return as early as February. She said also marijuana is an invasion of privacy, testing for it. Weed is prohibited in competition by the NAC because they use the WADA drug code. Mm-hmm. She also went on to say, Nick is a very close and dear friend of mine, so of course I'm going to defend him, but it's so unfair if one person tests for steroids. That could actually hurt a person because, we've all seen the tapes and we've all read Game of Shadows and we've all seen the videos of what steroids does to your body. It's not very good, folks. And another person smokes a plant that makes him happy and he gets suspended for 5 years. If, like you said, if there was a face to a movement and Rousey's big enough to rock the boat, then you could have something here. Unfortunately, like you mentioned, Las Vegas is where the UFC is. It's where they do the most business. So they're not getting out of Vegas anytime soon.
No, but something with Rousey coming forward, that may make Dana and some of the UFC executives have to take a stance.
I think so, because here's the thing. One commissioner recommended a lifetime ban for Diaz. I don't care if you hate the guy's guts. You're taking you can hate somebody. You can ask like if somebody you work with or somebody you don't like, and you could bash them under the bus or bash them on radio and bash them on television. When you come to taking a man's livelihood away, that crosses the line. Yeah. And this is what these people are doing. It was 33% of his UFC 183 purse, by the way, which is $165,000. And I don't care if you say, oh, these guys make so much money from fights or whatever. They are independent contractors, number one, so they have no rights. When it comes to working, the taxes, the health care, or whatever. And I'm not talking about Diaz in particular, but I'm talking about the lower-level fighters here. It's a very different industry. You don't just work, you get taxes taken out, and you get taxes back at the end of the year. This is not the way. It's a very interesting whole scenario. We're not going to get into the technicalities because we got a lot more stuff to talk about and not everyone's going to hear about it. But again, Dana White said, I would imagine if they suspended him 5 years and fined him $150,000, it's more than just marijuana. So you can't, it just makes no sense. Like, it's just so much bad publicity for a sport that's been completely on the rise, like we've talked about for the past couple of months.
And you have everybody coming out in support. So and like you said, the biggest name right now going is starting to get vocal about it. At first, it's kind of when I was checking around for it, like the day it broke, none of the big names are really talking about it. Then the next day, the Rousey comments came out at the press conference and things like that. So there's again, there's going to be an appeal and things like that, but it's going to be very interesting to see the route that Dana White and the executives of UFC have to take to kind of, I guess, tiptoe that line to be with both sides, because you have to have the NAC there, but at the same time you have to have the fighters. So I mean,
they're going to need to create some sort of working relationship here that is good for everybody, and I don't know how they do that, with the exception of either telling these NAC people who, I mean, we don't know what else they do, but they sure as hell not very good at their jobs when it comes to this, if this is the way we're looking at it, essentially.
Well, I mean but they're able to do whatever they want to do. I mean, they are
the problem.
They're what is it, judge, jury, and executioner. I mean, that's what they are.
There's no independent arbitration.
Nothing.
There's nothing of that.
I mean, we kind of discussed it a little bit off of air, but I mean, with the defense that they had compared to the defense that Anderson Silva had, I mean, come on.
And then just to put it, let me phrase this in a family-friendly way. Anderson Silva blamed his steroid test going positive for male enhancement pills. So this is what you're dealing with when it comes to comparisons of these two cases. One guy is positive for marijuana. Yes, it was his third test. No, it was the test under the World Anti-Doping Agency rules. It was not. He gets 5 years.
But also, doesn't he have a card or something? I thought that came out too, that he has a card for medical marijuana.
I mean, I would not be surprised.
Because, I mean, they're in California and things like that. Well, that was my question, kind of, is, like, how do you control? Because they don't go to these fights. Some of them go, a week out? Some go 3 days out? I mean, if he's fighting in California and he's fighting in Vegas, you can almost drive there, depending on where he's at in a couple days. So, I mean, he could have drove up a couple days before the fight. So he could have done it then and still have traces of it. So, I mean, how do you – I mean, it's not illegal in certain areas, as we've discussed, and now you're going to sit there and hammer people. And, I mean, other sports have kind of – I mean, they still have it to where, with the thing, but didn't some of them, I believe, raise, like, the trace levels?
I believe the NBA
trace levels or something like that.
Which makes sense. The NFL has not really touched the subject, but then again, if you're not in the drug testing program with the NFL, and I love using this stat because it's amazing, the NFL only tests for marijuana 1 day a year, essentially. Everyone's drug, like your initial drug test is April 20th. Just putting it out there.
Nice.
That's common knowledge.
That date that everybody should know.
That's a date that we don't have to explain. But the final thing I want to say about this, it's so bad, fans petitioned whitehouse.gov on Nick Diaz's behalf, by the way, to have the White House review this. And once 100,000 signatures is on a petition, the White House will look at it. And if you go on to whitehouse.gov or petitions.whitehouse.gov right now, you can find 60,000 people, or 60,000 people remain to get to 100,000. 40,000 people have already signed this petition to get Nick Diaz's suspension reversed, or, put at a normal level compared to everybody else. So
it's going to be interesting if they have to get involved in this. It's going to be very, very interesting.
It would be. Will we have a Judge Berman who saves the grace of Nick Diaz, just like the New York City judge who the NFL went to, thinking that it would be a good place to go, saving Tom Brady's butt and putting him onto the field to absolutely destroy the Pittsburgh Steelers in Week 1, and then possibly we get to see a wonderful matchup with the always glorious Rex Ryan in Week 2. I mean, there's going to be football knowledge thrown in this podcast anyway. I'm just saying this right now. Me and Sean are big football fans. So
yes, we are.
I apologize for the NFL references to be nodded.
But it kind of sticks to this point, though, with how you're doing. I mean, it
makes no sense.
Such an abuse of, or try of abuse of power, I guess.
And if you want to know what real abuse of power looks like and how dumb this or that Deflategate thing, I recommend watching the South Park that premiered on Wednesday. It's a very good way to put things. Okay, enough with the bad news, all right? Because you're talking about drug testing and Quest Diagnostics and all of these crazy things. It's just not a good vibe. We're recording this late. We just both got out of work. We do this for the people. We want you guys to listen to a good podcast. So we're taking time out of our daily schedules to make this happen. But again, I mean, we're having fun. So
yes, we are.
It doesn't matter to us. You wrote a story, Sean. Speaking, and then we can transition around to Ronda Rousey here. Mm-hmm. And you wrote a story about Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate. Probably the premier rival to Ronda Rousey, if you can call Rousey actually having a successful rival. Be Tate. She had some stuff to say about Ronda Rousey and Chris Cyborg Justino. What was that exactly?
Well, what was funny was she's saying that Ronda Rousey, when she started her career, was at 145 and stuck around 145 for the most of her career. And then when talk started getting serious about having to fight Cyborg, she all of a sudden said, "Hey, I'm 135." So now she's kind of saying that, and like part of my thing was just, now is this why now? I guess, I mean, this isn't, if she's known about this, she's known about it for a long time, and now it's time to air that dirty laundry because she's upset because she's not getting that third fight. And Dana White came out and said he was worried that it'd be a career killer for her if she lost to Rousey for the third time.
Well, here's the thing. Number one, if you have this information, I mean, you're doling it out now after she was on the set of a movie working with Cyborg and Rousey's opponent in November, Holly Holm. Mm-hmm. I'm not expecting Miesha Tate to say anything nice about Ronda Rousey. If you watch that season of The Ultimate Fighter, it is vicious between those two. Absolutely vicious. And if you want a good listen, after you're done listening to our podcast, I recommend the Joe Rogan Experience, because he recently had Ronda Rousey and her trainer Edmund Targaryen on, and they talked about that, and they talked about Miesha during that time and what was going on between them. Of course, it's only one side of the story, but it's just very interesting to put you in a frame of mind, at least where Ronda Rousey was coming from. Now, the quote itself here, I mean, Ronda Rousey could fight at 135, she could fight at 140, and she could probably, I mean, she started her career at 145. Is she more of a natural at 135? I think she is. And this was the division that the UFC instituted.
Yes.
So, and she was a champion in Strikeforce in this division. Am I right?
Yes, no, 100%.
So, like, if you want, it doesn't matter. The fight's not happening at 145.
No.
Not happening. There's no catch weight either.
Yeah, and Cyborg knows that.
No reason for Ronda Rousey
Yep.
to try to fight higher. She is the champion at 135. She doesn't have to go up to do it.
No, and Cyborg knows that, so that's why she's going down to weight. Yeah.
There's no incentive on Rousey's part. If you're looking at this, I mean, you can also say, oh, they just love Rousey and they love what she's good for. Here's the thing. If you're the champion at a weight class, you see this bigger chick, plain and simple. When you look at Cyborg, she's huge. She's a big fighter.
Yep.
And what is the incentive for Ronda Rousey to go up in weight to fight somebody when she's already the champion? She's already at the top of the mountain. Give me the reason why. Because it's not money. Because she can go out. Which we get to talk about now, which is wonderful. She is doing Roadhouse. She is remaking Roadhouse. She's playing Patrick Swayze's character, which is the greatest movie in the history of all time. If you've never seen it, you should go and watch it because it's just so 80s. It's just so wonderful.
Yes.
Rest in peace to the great Patrick Swayze, because he pulls a man's throat out of his body.
He beats up a man with a bear.
He does. It's just such a wonderful movie. And Ronda Rousey, like I said, he's starring in a remake of that.
Mm-hmm.
She could stop fighting right now and be in movies. And she could go to the WWE. She can do whatever she wants. So why in the world would you subject yourself to going up in 10 pounds? And she said time and time again she likes fighting at this weight. Because when you're fighting at 135, you're really fighting at 145, 150.
Yeah, after
weigh-in.
weigh-in.
To dehydration and the weight gain post weigh-in, whatever the case may be. And you see her now in all her media appearances. She looks a little bit bulkier than she does that weigh-in day. She clearly looks different.
Yep.
Which, I mean, it's walking around weight. Every fighter does it. So I just don't. I mean, Miesha Tate beat Amanda Nunes, win something else because Dana White's right. As long as Rousey's champion, and if Tate has lost 3 times in a row, there is no reason why she should get a 4th fight. No. Frankly, there's probably no reason why she would get a 3rd fight. And, I mean, Miesha Tate's a very good fighter. As we saw, I mean, what she did to Jessica Eye, it was ugly. But it was a win's a win. So I just feel like it's just a waste of breath. It really is. Because the only fight that people are going to care about is Ronda and Cyborg at 135. That's the only way it's going to happen. If Holly Holm pulls out a Buster Douglas Mike Tyson situation, bam, you got something crazy.
Yeah. No, I mean,
she won't. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
I feel better about her against Holm than I did about Betch Correia, and I felt really good about Betch Correia winning.
And that one, all of what you had to hold your breath for 19 seconds.
Yes, that was don't cry. Remember, just don't cry when you hit the mat. And we say this jokingly about Rousey, but she's just so particularly dominant over everybody else. Like there needs to be something. We don't know who it will be. Rousey's time could eventually come. I don't think she'll fight low-end talent at the end of her career just to make sure she has a perfect, undefeated record.
She's not going to make sure she gets to 49-0 without a blemish.
No, I don't think she's going to do that. I mean, who would really do that? Like, fight some no-name fighter to end his career, just
make
to
like
make sure
80% less money
record is intact.
Make 80% less money, and then call it a
Sell literally what, like 20% of your previous pay-per-view buy rate just for Flash to get. Who the hell would do such a thing?
by title record.
Yeah, but yeah, the thing is here. Tate can talk all she wants.
Yep.
She's not going to get another fight.
No. I mean, the only way she gets another fight is if Holm gets hurt training for this fight. I think they'd have to maybe throw her in, I guess. I don't know who else they would, but...
I think that'd be good. Either her or Amanda Nunes. I think
Yeah.
Tate should fight Nunes. Apparently, that's not in the plans at all.
Yeah.
Because for Tate, because she's enjoying herself on vacation, which she can do. Any fighter can do that. But if you really wanted this fight, you'd be, okay, I didn't get the fight. I want to fight somebody who's up and coming, which would be Amanda Nunes.
Yeah.
Everyone
Beat
else
them and then
beaten by Rousey.
make another statement for yourself to become that next fight, if that's so it be it.
Mm-hmm. Fight your way up, a la somebody like Robbie Lawler or something like that. But then again, I think it's all smoke. There's no really fire here. But I think we'll see what happens when Rousey and Holm get into it in Australia for UFC.
Well, I think Tate's just trying to keep her name out there so that people don't forget about her. That's my own personal opinion.
That could be a thing as well. I mean, but here's the thing. Sometimes you do that too much, and people get tired of you. Mm-hmm. So you got to be careful out there. A person whose name is always out there because he's always talking. That would be Conor McGregor.
No, I've never heard of that guy. Who's that?
He's a skinny Irish dude who's on TV every Wednesday night at 10 o'clock now with the new season of The Ultimate Fighter, which I've only caught a little bit of, and I really do need to catch up on my DVR. But Thursday Night Football takes precedence, and there's so much to watch during the week. It's football season, my friend. It's a lot. So, with all the fights and all the football, and, all the DraftKings commercials that I see every 30 seconds on my television, how could you watch it?
They put out almost 6,000 commercials last week.
Yes.
In a week.
Are we sponsored by DraftKings?
No, hopefully, hey, hook us up.
I mean, if you're throwing money out, we'll take it.
Apparently, they're advertising everywhere else.
Yes, we will gladly take your money.
We talk MMA. You got an MMA part. Let's do it.
Yeah, and then win it back in daily fantasy league.
Yeah.
Just like me. But McGregor in the news again, and not just because Jose Aldo's calling him an Irish sucker. And that was sucker with an S, just to make sure everyone heard that right. He apparently will get what he has been asking for a very long time, Sean. You know what that is?
What is that?
That is a stadium show at Croke Park in Ireland. If, and only if, he defeats Jose Aldo in the main event of UFC 194, set on pace to be the greatest card, top to bottom, at least in my opinion, in the history of the UFC, come December 12th this year. Mm-hmm. According to Dana White, it's a cinch that McGregor will headline at Croke Park if he beats Aldo. He said if he beats Aldo in December, next fight's at Croke Park. We told him he could defend his title there. So he hasn't fought in Ireland since July 2014 when he knocked out Diego Brandao at the main event of a Fight Pass card. He's been in Vegas twice, headlined, of course, UFC 189. He's also been in Boston, an Irish hotbed in the United States, and I can vouch for that most definitely. He tried to get on the Fight Night card for October 24th, which is headlined by Duffy and
Mir.
No, not Todd Duffy and Frank Mir.
Oh,
the guy who McGregor beat, Dustin Poirier.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, and that's gonna be a fun Fight Night card too. But do you like this idea or do you love this idea? Because I don't see anything wrong with it.
No, I have no issue with any of that. I mean, it's
too much of an advantage for him to fight in Ireland if he beats Aldo.
But if you're UFC, you cannot not do this.
Yes.
I mean, you can't. I mean, why would you take a chance of him having to have another fight when you can capitalize on that show in Ireland? I mean, you're going to have a huge audience there. Not to mention whoever probably doesn't get in there, they're probably going to have some big thing outside. I mean, there is so much they can do with that there in Ireland.
Yes, and I say this, and if somebody says, "Oh, why should he get home field advantage?" You know what Jose Aldo's defended his last two title fights in? That would be Brazil. So, some people relish the opportunity to go into the Lions.
I mean, the ones that look at it like that, do they think the American fighters always have home field advantage when they're fighting in Vegas or wherever they fight?
Yeah,
because Conor McGregor's not fighting in Ireland, so is that a disadvantage for him?
If only Chris Weidman was able to fight in New York, right? That'd be great. But again, some things are just pipe dreams. This, on the other hand, could be a real deal thing if Conor McGregor beats Jose Aldo. Of course, there's a big if there.
Yeah, big with a capital I, capital F.
And with McGregor and Aldo, we'll get more into it as the fight gets closer, obviously. But with all, I've found it more. It seems like Aldo's taking a more measured approach with his way of dealing with this fight. And I said last week that he's doing nothing to promote it at all. Maybe I may have jumped on it a little bit too much because he, like I said, he mocked McGregor after being drug tested on his Instagram. He wrote this nice little thing. And he's also been working on his English. If you look at his Instagram, I follow him on Instagram. It's actually pretty entertaining. He said, "Hey, Irish sucker, haven't you done your drug test, or they don't have it in Ireland? I did it today, and it's the USADA packet and signed statements, and him in a Barcelona jersey, which, I mean, front runner completely, but that's besides the point. I want to do it again next week. How about you? Are you ready for it? Are you ready, punk?" I don't know when he started watching Clint Eastwood movies, but I do know that maybe I may have jumped on Jose Aldo too soon.
Well, he kind of hurt both our takes last week because I was like, maybe they're trying to make him get a little bit of that sympathy vote, and now he just went and healed it too.
Oh, this is great. I love it when a fight has some sparks behind it. It's always really good.
And this is one of the fights that really doesn't have to have a lot of sparks. People want to see it anyways, and now you're getting these sparks added, so it's just like, all right, here we go.
And continuing with the theme with the UFC 194 card, I saw a story today, and let me see if I can find it real quick, regarding Luke Rockhold and Chris Weidman, and regarding their fight, because there's been, seems everybody's go-to insult is regarding steroids, and I don't know if, let me see if it was Rockhold or it was Belfort, because somebody was talking about Chris Weidman cycling, it was. I think it was Belfort. So this adds a little bit more theme to it because Rockhold's been coming at him left and right, and Rockhold's a great. Everyone's forgetting that they're the undercard here for UFC 194, and these guys could headline easily. I think Rockhold's that good, and Weidman is really tired of people not caring the fact that he beat Anderson Silva not once but twice, and is a Brazilian killer essentially when it comes to his fights. And 4 months later, one of those Brazilians, Vitor Belfort, like I said, he fired back at Chris Weidman because days before the middleweight title fight in May, a report by ESPN revealed that both fighters had passed the random drug test, but the Brazilian's testosterone levels were higher than Weidman's. Of course, Belfort has been going through testosterone replacement therapy, and that has been a thing that's been happening. And Weidman had a much lower testosterone level. It's a quarter of the amount. And Belfort said in Sao Paulo today, because he's, of course, promoting his trilogy bout with Dan Henderson on November 7th, which is just awesome. I mean, old fights like that, oldie but goodie fights are always good. For guys that are nowhere near championship level, it's just a perfect little thing. He said, Belfort said, and I quote, "Did he stop cycling? Wasn't him the one to stop cycling because his testosterone was so low? I was doing a treatment and paid the price. But have you ever thought about it or no? Nobody ever talked about it. My levels were normal. His levels were low. How a kid at his age, because Weidman's a very young fighter, has low testosterone." And Belfort claims every fighter was using banned substances while he was on testosterone replacement therapy. The reality is everybody's doing cycling with their testosterone. I didn't hide anything. You all knew what I was doing. I was doing a treatment. I still have the deficiency. So, calling Chris Weidman a steroid cycling fighter, it just never ends. And I don't think it will ever. Even with the USADA drug testing, which is, again, you want to learn more about that stuff, listen to Rousey on Joe Rogan's podcast, because it is just literally She describes it to a T, what she had to go through. Because USADA was doing judo and Olympic testing. And this is the same level that the UFC's brought in. And when she came to the UFC, she said, literally, this is all you got to do to do the drug test? It's sickening, the differences between it. So I just found that very, very clueless on one part, but it's happening. They've done better now, and I think there shouldn't be a problem going forward when it comes to testing guys, unless they send it out to a non-accredited drug lab and one test comes back positive when the other two tests that were done by an accredited drug test agency was done right. But I can't think of any situations currently going on where something along those lines happened. Oh wait, that was the whole thing we talked about for the first 25 minutes of this podcast.
Look at that. So, now you're trying to go back to old things.
Hey, see, here's the thing. I have to circumvent, I have to bring us back. I have to bring us full circle on the pod because, we gotta wrap this puppy up in a little bit. So anything else you wanted to hit on as we go before I can wrap this up in a little bow? Because there's two more things I want to hit on before we end up here. So is there anything you particular? I'm giving you the floor, Sean.
No, we had discussed it beforehand, and we hit what I wanted to hit. So I will let you continue wrapping the bow.
All right. Fedor came out and said, I feel I am ready for my MMA comeback. That's what he said in a video, and he had a stare down, him and Randy Couture at Bellator Dynamite press conference, which the tournament is happening this week, by the way. I personally, if you want to watch some good fights on Spike TV, you can do that. Doesn't do much for me, even though it's a 4-man tournament for Bellator, but again, there's Bellator for you. But Fedor and Randy Couture had a little stare down, harkening back to their days as heavyweights, which was kind of fun. But until Dana White says something, something on Fedor, I will continue to go on the assumption that the white whale will never be harpooned.
Yeah.
So I hope that can happen soon. And John Jones is in the news. His legal team apparently could be positioning for a plea deal in the felony hit and run case. Of course, it's been following him around. His case was transferred, and it looks like, according to MMAfighting.com, which, they tear it up, they really do. They're basically, all the moves by Jones' legal team has made it for a plea deal that was that could be in the works, which would make sense for Jones because everything I've read about that report, he's in deep stuff in regards to all of that. Mm-hmm. And the best thing would do to plea out and see what happens if he wanted to get back to fighting, which unfortunately he's a troubled story when it comes to addiction and all that stuff, and he's caused some major headaches and does some bad stuff.
Well, we better watch out because the NAC might get him for 5 years.
I don't know. I really don't know at this point. They can do whatever the hell they want. And it's not good. It's really not good to the sport. So I'm not going to go all free Nick Diaz on everybody, but I'm just going to go, let's hope for a fair and balanced trial in every sport, in everything. Don't take personal feelings into it. Never turns out well.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Really doesn't. So hopefully Diaz's suspension is reduced and we do get to see him fight again, because say what you want about the Diaz brothers and people buying quote-unquote wolf tickets to their fight, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google the word wolf tickets. There's a great video that you can watch. I just hope, for the sake of things, we get to see his career wrapped up in a fight fashion, not by his livelihood being taken away. That's all I have to say. Anything else you want to say, Sean?
Not on top of that, sir. I cannot beat what you just said.
Oh, wow. I really do appreciate that. So, on that note, thank you, everybody, for listening to TFM Live. This is the 4th edition. We will have a 5th edition.
Imagine that, 4. And we're still going.
Yes. And now, fingers crossed, technology, staying together, working. We will be back next week. We're going to try to narrow down a day that we can do every week. so we don't have to put this out on different days. We want to make it easy for you listeners. I am working on finding an RSS feed that we can put on iTunes, so it literally will just appear on your
it's like magic.
Yeah, like magic, like onto your phone, onto the podcast app, TFM Live, bam, right there. Until then, you can find us, thefullmountmma.com. I can't express that enough. Goes to the site. You want to read some cool stuff, you can read it from me and Sean. Yeah, you can listen to the podcast. It will have its own article, I believe, tomorrow. I will work on that. And you'll be able to listen to this whole thing. Any others, you can go back. They are there on the YouTube channel. I believe it's youtube.com/thefullmountmma, which I will go double check right now. While Sean, you can say some parting words to the audience if you like.
Most definitely. Make sure you catch up with us on Twitter. I'm at SS Sports Talk. The Full Mount's at the Full Mount, and you are at, is it BR Coyle 11?
It's B Coyle 11.
B Coyle 11. Okay.
And it's tough because my email and my name and my all this YouTube and Gmail and Twitter don't all interconnect, unfortunately. So and then at Brian Coyle is taken by some squatter. So
yeah, that's what happens.
So screw Twitter squatters and let me
all of you
name on Twitter. I would like that very much.
They should go in front of the NAC and take care of them too.
Yeah, I wonder if they're at NAC. I hope not. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for listening. Again, you can find us online, thefullmountmma.com. For Sean Stanley, I am Brian Coyle. Have a good week, everybody.
The TFM Live Podcast is brought to you by thefullmountmma.com. Check us out on Twitter at The Full Mount.